Just a quick special announcement before we start today's video. Tennessee's hot doo-doo. I'm just kidding. That's not the announcement. Tonight's call-in show is going to be at 9 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. So today's Thursday. Tonight's call-in show, 9 p.m. instead of 10 p.m. The Tennessee Vols fired their coach again after the 2020 season because, well, that's what Tennessee does. They fire coaches. They're on to their fifth head coach since firing Philip Fulmer back in 2007, Lane Kiffin, Derek Dooley, Butch Jones, Jeremy Pruitt, and now Josh Heupel in from Central Florida, previously of Oklahoma, takes over in Knoxville, and it's a big mess. Listen, I've had a lot of fun with Tennessee fans on this channel over the years, kind of going back and forth with them, knocking them on some of the shortcomings Tennessee's had over the last 10 years or so, and I'm just going to be honest. It's not even really that fun to do anymore. Everyone knows Tennessee struggles over the last 10 to 12 years. They don't have a lot of talent on the team. They lost a ton of the talent they did have to the transfer portal. Yet another new coaching staff comes in. They're miles away from the three biggest rivals, Georgia, Florida, and Alabama. I'm going to do my best to keep this preview video as unbiased as I can. This is going to be a game-by-game prediction for the Tennessee Vols 2021 college football season. Good morning, and that's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou. Live for you on LouTube today. Thanks for watching. Really appreciate it also, and tune in to that as well. Hey, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. Did you know I post college football videos almost every single day of the year? It's true. In fact, some of them are even watchable. I don't know about this one. You have to let me know in the comments down below at the end of this video whether you think this one was watchable or not. That determination is left up to you, the viewer. Also, let me know at the end of the video if you think I got the record right or wrong. If you think I'm wrong, let me know what games it is you think Tennessee wins and loses and which ones you think that I got wrong. But let's go ahead and get right into it. Tennessee Vols 2021. Again, another new coaching staff. And the transfer situation at Tennessee is, I don't know if I've ever seen anything like this in one offseason. Tennessee lost 25 or 26 players to the transfer portal. Combine that with some of the players they lost to the NFL or to graduation or whatever the case, and it's just not a good situation. They're not going to be at the 85 scholarship limit this season. It would have been impossible to recruit enough players to replace everything they lost through transfer. So they're going to be under the 85 limit. Depth is going to be a huge issue for Tennessee, on top of the fact that, yes, they have a huge talent issue in several key spots, and their defense could be one of the worst in the SEC this year. Josh Heupel really is stepping into an almost unmanageable position. Tennessee fans, I love Tennessee fans. They're passionate. They have stuck around through some really hard times over the last few years. They've really got to adjust their expectations. I do believe that fan expectations has been one of the reasons that Tennessee coaches have failed so many times over the last 10 years. The expectations that fans have of Tennessee and the reality that Tennessee football actually exists in are so far apart, it can't even be described. Right now, Tennessee is a program that should be happy in any year that involves a trip to a bowl game, period. There should be no goal for Tennessee fans beyond that at this point. That's not trash talking. That's not me trying to get the Tennessee fans riled up. You can't keep bringing coaches in and expecting them to compete for the East or beat Georgia, Alabama, and Florida or win 10-plus games. Tennessee hasn't won 10 games since 2007. They've got, 8 losing seasons since 2005? I mean, you've got more losing seasons than you do winning seasons. You haven't won the SEC since 1998, haven't won the division since 2007. You haven't won a major bowl game since 1998. It's just been a rough stretch for Tennessee. Can it get any better in 2021? No, I don't think it can. And that has nothing to do with my opinion of Josh Heupel. Josh Heupel may end up down the road being one of the greatest college football coaches we've ever seen. I don't know. But it won't be because of anything that happens this year. This is just going to be a rough year for Tennessee for a lot of different reasons, a lot of which I've already mentioned. But the transfer situation at Tennessee is probably the one that stands out the most. You did have some talent returning this year to Knoxville. You had 2 pretty good running backs. They both transferred out. You had a really good inside linebacker, Henry Toto. He transferred out. The list just goes on and on. Your best players on both offense and defense chose to transfer out. You still have some 5 stars on the team. You got a couple of 5-star offensive linemen. You've got some talent at certain places. But the QB situation is a complete unknown and honestly a total mess. I know Josh Heupel is an offensive guy, and I wouldn't be surprised no matter who he chooses at the quarterback position if they show some flashes at times of being pretty good. If nothing else, Josh Heupel has shown that he can work with QBs. He's also shown that when it comes to defense, he doesn't know and doesn't appear to care about the product he puts on the field. At Central Florida, when he was at Central Florida, they had one of the worst defenses in America. And unfortunately, he's walking into a situation at Tennessee where they have one of the least talented defenses in the SEC. Tennessee would have to score a lot of points, in my mind, for them to stay close or compete in the majority of their games this season. Let's take a look at Tennessee's offense and see what it might look like this year. A legitimate quarterback battle, I guess. I've been operating under the assumption all offseason that this was Harrison Bailey's job. But the closer we get to, well, I guess camp actually did start this week, but the closer we got to sort of August, the more I started to hear that, it might not be Harrison Bailey. Of course, it still could. But Joe Milton, I'm hearing, has impressed in practice early on. You've also got another transfer you brought in. Joe Milton was the transfer from Michigan. You brought in another transfer from Virginia Tech. What's his name? Hendon Hooker? Makes sense, I guess. So you bring him in. So both of these guys have more starting experience than Harrison Bailey. Harrison Bailey did play some last year as a true freshman, but he was really put in some spots that you don't really want to have to put a true freshman in. He looked okay at times. He made some mistakes at times, sort of typical freshman behavior that you see from a quarterback. As the time I'm filming this video, I've got no clue who's going to start quarterback for Tennessee. I'm sure the Tennessee fans all have their favorite or their pick of who they think it might be. I'm still kind of leaning towards Harrison Bailey, although I just keep hearing more and more about Joe Milton. Seems to me like Hendon Hooker may be on the outside looking in, but we'll see. I don't know. Wide receiver position for Tennessee, again, you had some talented wide receivers last year. You didn't have a quarterback that was able to consistently get them the ball. As far as your returning wide receivers this year, you have Hyatt and Jones Jr. A lot of people are watching this video and they're scratching their head going, who the hell is that? I get it. Point is, not a lot of proven talent at the wide receiver position on Tennessee's team. Each of these guys, Hyatt and Jones, played last year, had some catches, had some yards. Not household names, though. No real superstar at Tennessee's wide receiver position in my mind. You got some young and experienced players, too. We'll see if any of them can step up and take on a bigger role. Running back, I mentioned this. You lost 2 pretty good running backs that could have both played again this year. One to Oklahoma, one to wherever the hell else he went. Point is, they both got the hell out of Dodge. What about Jamari Small? Well, he's your leading returning rusher now. He had 26 carries for 117 yards last year. Despite the fact that Tennessee lost 2 of its best running backs from last year, Chandler and Gray, I still think Tennessee's running situation could be okay this year. In fact, it may be better than the passing situation. I know people look at Josh Heupel as sort of a quarterback guru, but I just don't know about these wide receivers and tight ends. Running backs, Jamari Small, he'll be okay. Last year as a freshman, like I mentioned, 26 carries, 117 yards. You bring a guy in from JUCO, Tyon Evans, and the offensive line is way better at run blocking, at least last year, than they were at pass blocking. And you got 2 5-stars coming back. I mean, Cade Mays and Darnell Wright, yes, they underperformed last year. There's no doubt, no question about it. But they're 5-stars, and they're 5-stars for a reason. They've got a ton of talent. You're probably going to move Cade Mays outside to tackle. Why? Well, because your starting tackle, another 5-star, Wanya Morris, again, transferred, got the hell out of Dodge. But I still think Tennessee could have a pretty good run-blocking offensive line. I don't have a whole lot of faith or trust in Tennessee's offensive line and their ability to protect against or protect for the pass, which could be a problem no matter who the quarterback is. This is why I think the running game may be more successful overall for Tennessee offensively than the passing game. Overall, my assessment of Tennessee's offense, all of the hope, every bit of hope that any Tennessee fan can have for a decent offense this year has to lay at the feet of Josh Heupel. because outside of his ability to work some kind of magic offensively, there's not a whole lot of reason to be excited when you look at Tennessee's offense. Harrison Bailey's a big name. Joe Milton looked good at times last year for Michigan, but let's not forget he lost his starting job halfway through the season, which is why he's at Tennessee now. And the other guy, like I mentioned, is a hoe. All right, over on the defensive side of the ball, this is where I think things could really get ugly for Tennessee this year. I don't think it's beyond the realm of possibility that Tennessee has the worst defense in the SEC this year. Vandy's going to struggle too, but they brought in a defensive guy as head coach, Clark Lee, the former defensive coordinator at Notre Dame. I know Ole Miss has a pretty bad defense, or at least they did last year, maybe Mississippi State too. It's possible Tennessee ends up with the worst defense of all in the SEC, though. Pruitt's defense last year was absolutely horrible, and HEUPEL's defense last year at UCF was even worse. This is not a good combination. Severe lack of talent on the defensive side of the ball for Tennessee, and a head coach who has proven not to care all that much about defense, not setting up to be good on the defensive side of the ball for Tennessee. Couple of bright spots. In the secondary, Alontae Taylor. He's pretty good. Probably the leader on the defense. Now, who's going to play on the other side? That's a debate. You got Burrell, George Jr. You got to pick somebody. You have some defensive secondary talent led by Alontae Taylor, but not a whole lot. You have safeties. 3 safeties return. 3 safeties that weren't very good last year. Again, they're going to have to play a whole lot better. Linebacker is clearly the glaring weakness on this team. You lose a guy like Henry Toto or whatever the hell his name was, that doesn't get replaced. And it's not just Henry Toto. Your 2 top returning linebackers, much like your 2 top returning running backs, both transferred out. Crouch transferred out too. So you lose your best 2 returning linebackers. Now, Jeremy Banks, he's back. He was okay last year. He's your top returning linebacker, though. And he had 38 career tackles. 38 career tackles. Not good at the linebacker position. Aaron Beasley, a former running back. Okay, good luck with that. Defensive line. Now, let me say this about the defensive line. Not a whole lot of superstar talent. Maybe not a whole lot of NFL talent. But 5 players with experience who are all super seniors. You're allowed an extra year of eligibility because of last year's COVID mess. Tennessee has 5 defensive linemen whose eligibility would have been up last year that all came back. So a very experienced and veteran group along the defensive line. Clearly, they're going to have to play a whole lot better than they have in the past, though. But they do have the experience. Let's put Tennessee's 2021 schedule up on the screen. We'll take a look at it and see what they can do. All right, Tennessee kicks things off on a Thursday night this year, September 2nd, week 1, Saturday, September 4th. Tennessee plays 2 days before that, September 2nd, Thursday night at home against Bowling Green. People have been having a lot of fun with Tennessee this offseason, saying Bowling Green's going to beat them. Don't sleep on Bowling Green. Don't forget about the Georgia State game from a couple of years ago. Bowling Green was terrible last year. They might have been even worse than Tennessee. I actually think Tennessee gets a win to start the season at home on a Thursday night. Probably be a lot of people watching this game too, since it comes on a Thursday. Tennessee starts 1-0. Week 2, another non-con game, this time against an ACC opponent. Pitt comes calling to Knoxville. Pitt, an above-average ACC team. An above-average ACC team. Not saying they're an above-average team in general. They're above average in the ACC. I could see Pitt somewhere around the 8-9 win mark this year in the ACC, honestly. They're going to beat you. I'm sorry. I cannot pick Tennessee to win this game. Pitt's the defensive line is good, if not, maybe not great. I don't think Tennessee's offensive line is going to be able to handle Pitt's defensive line, especially against the pass. I think it's going to be a long day for whoever's playing quarterback in this game for Tennessee against Pitt. And then offensively, I like Pitt's quarterback situation better than I do Tennessee's because at least I know what I'm getting there. I think this has the potential to be a good game, at least maybe into the second half, but I just think Pitt pulls away and gets a win on the road in Knoxville. The Vols is 1-1. Week 3, another home game, another non-con game, this time against Tennessee Tech. Win. It would be fun to pick you to lose one of these games to Tennessee Tech or Bowling Green or later in the year to South Alabama. I just don't see it happening. Josh Heupel's new to Tennessee. He's not new to being a head coach. He knows how to get a team prepared, even against a lesser opponent. I think Tennessee handles business in week 3. They're 2-1. Not a lot to look forward to after this point, though, in my opinion. Week 4, you start your SEC schedule. You have back-to-back road games against, I think, 2 of the best 3 teams in the East. Week 4 at Florida, Week 5 at Mizzou. I've got Tennessee dropping both of those games. Obviously, Florida's not going to be as good as they were last year. At least that's the general consensus amongst people who have a functioning brain. They lost 90% of their offense, and they don't recruit at a level anywhere near somebody like an Alabama that can just replace that immediately. Think about some of the offenses that Florida had under Steve Spurrier and the ridiculous numbers they put up, and then realize that last year's Florida offense with Kyle Trask, Kyle Pitts, and those 2 wide receivers broke every single one of those records. All those guys are gone now. I'm not a buyer in Emory Jones. I'm not here to convince anybody Florida's going 15-0. That being said, they're still miles ahead of Tennessee in my opinion. I think Florida gets this win. Plus, it's a road game for Tennessee. Same thing with Week 5 on the road at Mizzou. Again, I think Mizzou could finish 3rd in the East this year. They've got a lot coming back. They looked pretty good at the end of last year. They've got a second-year head coach, so he's got 1 year under his belt. Now this year he's got a full offseason to implement things. I think you take another loss on the road at Missouri. Then you come back home and play South Carolina. You beat South Carolina last year in the first game of the season on the road in Williams-Brice in a pretty good game. It was a really close game, a 1-score game. Tennessee hung on to win that thing at the end. I think you beat them again. I think Tennessee gets a win against South Carolina, this time in Knoxville. South Carolina also has a new coaching staff. They bring in Shane Beamer, first time being a head coach. If you're looking around the SEC for teams devoid of talent like Tennessee is, outside of Vandy and South Carolina, it's hard to find any. South Carolina also struggling when it comes to talent. I think Tennessee finds a way to get this win at home against South Carolina, although I do not think this will be an easy win. You stay at home the following week and take on Ole Miss. Not a good matchup here for Tennessee. Tennessee, like I mentioned, I think is going to have a really bad defense. Ole Miss is going to have a really, really, really good offense. This game, in my opinion, could get out of hand. This could be Tennessee's worst loss of the season. They play some better teams than Ole Miss, but this game could get away from Tennessee. Ole Miss can score and score in a hurry and score in a lot of different ways. I can seriously see this being a 25 or 30-point game at halftime. There won't be many Tennessee fans left in the stadium at this game in the fourth quarter. Ole Miss beats you at home. Then you go on the road and play Alabama. They're going to beat you. I know it's a rivalry game, 3rd Saturday in October, and as a college football fan, I would love to see this game become competitive again. This is one of those rivalry games that I look forward to watching every single year. I know Tennessee's been on the wrong end of a long losing streak in this one. Unfortunately for the Tennessee man, I think it continues on the road at Alabama. They should beat you relatively easily. Then you have your bye week. You come out of that and you go on the road and play at Kentucky. In my opinion, this is the swing game of there's 2 games, in my opinion, that are swing games for Tennessee in 2021. 2 games where whether they win or lose these 2 games is going to determine bowl eligibility. The first one is the Pitt game, which I have you losing. The second one is this one on the road at Kentucky. I think you've got to win one of these 2 games between Pitt and Kentucky to have any chance to go bowling in 2021. It won't be a great bowl game even if you do it. You'll be a 6-win team even if you beat Kentucky, because I've got you losing to Georgia and then beating South Alabama and Vandy. So it comes down to this Kentucky game. Tennessee needs a bowl game. Why? 14 extra practices. Forget the money you make from a bowl. Forget traveling somewhere and playing in some nobody in a Gasparilla Bowl that no one will watch. The practices is what's important here. A win at Kentucky would give Tennessee, well, it would make Tennessee bowl eligible in my opinion, because I think they're going to beat South Alabama and Vandy. I went out on a limb here and I gave Tennessee a win on the road at Kentucky. Now, this is the one pick I've made out of all the picks I've made this offseason that has made the most amount of people mad. I've already done a Kentucky version of this video, so if the Tennessee man has seen that video, you know I picked you to beat Kentucky on the road. The Kentucky fan was not happy about this. I have received more negative comments probably on that Kentucky preview video than any other preview or prediction video I've done this offseason. They're convinced they're going to beat the bejesus out of you. They're convinced they're going to take your soul. I'm not so convinced. I think Tennessee and Josh Heupel are good enough in 2021 to win one game we don't think they'll win. I think it's on the road at Kentucky. It comes at a good time for Tennessee, right after a bye week. If it weren't for that bye week, I would probably have Kentucky winning this game. But because Tennessee gets a week to prepare, I decided to give them the win. That combined with wins at the end of the year against South Alabama and Vandy, you're going to lose to Georgia. Come on. I mean, Come on. But you'll beat South Alabama and Vandy. That will make Tennessee, in its first year under Josh Heupel, 6-6 and eligible for a bowl. I know that that's not what Tennessee fans are looking for, especially long term. I truly believe 6-6 is a successful season for Tennessee in 2021. It's hard to look at where Tennessee has been over the last 10 years. Look at the fact that they were 3-7 last year. Look at the fact that they're on their 6th head coach since 2007, and not be happy with a 6-6 season under a first-year head coach in a year where almost half your returning players transferred out. Having 25 or 26 players transfer is unheard of, especially that many starters to transfer is just unbelievable. So I know 6-6 isn't what Tennessee fans are going to jump up and down about, but I do think that would be a successful season for Josh Heupel in year one, and that's my official prediction for Tennessee. 6-6 with a win towards the end of the season at Kentucky, which I think is the difference maker in the end. Again, I know that game could go either way. Maybe the South Carolina game could go either way. There's also a chance you could beat Pitt. I'll give you that too. But I'm going to settle on 6-6. I appreciate you guys watching. Have a good morning.